Hello everybody, and welcome to this, my second of two videos on the Nikon D5000. In the first video we looked at what all the stuff is. In this video we're going to talk about how to use it all. Now, because this is a DSLR, it's not going to do anything at all unless it's got a good battery in it. So to change the battery, you simply open the battery door here, pop out the old battery, and this uses a Nikon ENEL9 battery. So it is rechargeable, so just make sure you have a charger for it, and take the dead battery, recharge it, put in a fresh battery, just slide it in like that, close the battery chamber, and you're good to go. You've changed the battery. Next thing we're going to talk about is how to mount and unmount lenses on this camera. To remove a lens, you simply push down the lens release button and turn the lens clockwise to remove it. To mount another lens, you just find the lens mounting index there, the lens mounting index right there on the camera, line them up, and turn it counter or anti-clockwise until it clicks into place, and now you've put a different lens on your camera. Next, let's talk about your memory cards. This camera uses SD cards right here under this port. You push it down to eject it so that you can pull the card out, and then you simply grab the card, a new card, and put it in and push it until it clicks to put it in place. This can use SD cards up to 32 gigabytes according to the Nikon manual. That said, I've put a 64 gigabyte card in here and it's used it without issue. So whether that was an update in the firmware or whether it was just being conservative on Nikon's part, I couldn't tell you. But at least with this camera that you're looking at right now, a 64 gigabyte SD card did work. 128 did not. All right, so let's go through the functions on this camera and talk about what they are. We're going to start here with the mode dial. And this basically allows you to control your different shooting modes, and there are a bunch of them on this camera. Pop down the screen there so we can get a look at that. So we're going to start here with these different scene modes. And so this one right here is night portrait. And what night portrait does is take a long exposure and also trigger the flash. So you can have a person standing in front of a cityscape and you'll get that person illuminated as well as the lights from the city. This is your close-up or macro mode, which optimizes the camera settings for subjects that are as close as your lens will let you focus. Sports or action gives you a wide aperture and higher ISO to freeze motion. Kids, that's a mode specialized for taking photos of kids. Landscape mode is best with wide angle lenses and gives you a deep depth of field so that what's close to your camera and far away is in focus. And portrait mode, which is designed to give you a person who's in focus and a blurry background. You can set this up for success by having your subject stand 10 to 20 feet in front of the background that you want to have be blurry. The scene modes, if you set it to scene, I believe there's a way in here to set up a custom scene mode setting, or it will automatically pick between these two. I forgot to write this down on my outline, so I'm going off of memory here, and it's been a long time since I wrote this script. This is no flash, and that will disable your flash. Magical green camera is full auto. The camera does everything. You have no control whatsoever over anything. P, S, A, and M are your modes that give you the most control. Program mode, the camera does everything, but you can use program shifting to adjust settings. Shutter priority, you pick the shutter speed, the camera will pick the best aperture. Aperture priority, you pick the best aperture and the camera will pick the best shutter speed. Manual mode, you pick your aperture and shutter speed, and if it turns out well, it's great, you did well. If it turns out badly, it's your fault. So we're going to go into live view here real quickly, and you can see if we're in manual mode, we can adjust the shutter speed with the rear command dial. And then to adjust the aperture, we hold down the exposure compensation button and then use the command dial to pick the aperture. And that is how you adjust your settings in manual mode. In aperture priority, the command dial controls the aperture. Shutter priority, the command dial controls the shutter speed. And as you can see here, it's saying low, meaning that we do not have enough light with our shutter speed to give us a usable photo. This lens is not fast enough for that. And then in program mode, you can use your exposure compensation here to intentionally over or underexpose your images slightly. Okay, so let's go into the screen here and talk about what some of these different things are. Okay, so we've gone over the command dial. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit the info button, and that will bring up this orange screen. Using the cross pad allows us to pick a different autofocus point. There we go, if we would like to specify one. We're going to hit this again, and now we can access some of this stuff. I'm going to hold down the auto exposure button and get us back to 0. If we go to a setting, there's pictures on here? No, there's not. Okay. So if we go to a setting and we hit OK, it will bring up the different settings. Okay. Flash is just standard flash use. Red eye reduction eliminates red eye in human subjects. Slow curtain sync with red eye reduction allows us to use a slow shutter speed and red eye reduction. Slow curtain sync allows us to use slow shutter speeds and the flash so that we can capture, say, the background sunset and that perfectly illuminated tree in the foreground. And rear curtain sync, as you can see here, allows us to capture the movement of objects through the frame by triggering the flash at the end of the exposure. This is exposure compensation, which we can enter and then increase the exposure to make things brighter or high key, or decrease the exposure to make things darker or low key. This is your flash exposure value compensation, which you can use to increase the output power of your flashes or decrease the output power of your flashes. This is your image toning. I don't know what all of the different abbreviations stand for, but probably standard, neutral, vibrant. I'm not sure what these are. What you want to do is either leave it in standard or neutral, because any image toning you want to do, you'll be able to do better on your computer in whatever photo editing software you have today. So any of the other ones will give you image toning that will be built into your images that you might have to undo, and that's harder than adding it. Bracketing on or off. Basically you're going to choose different settings. Do you want to take 3 images bracketed by 1/3 of a stop, 2/3, a full 1 1/3, 1 2/3, or 2 full stops, or not at all? This is good if you're shooting something like HDR, or you want to play around with different exposures to see how your camera's performing, or to get high and low key shots of the same scene. ADL is going to be your sort of like HDR light, basically. You can see here in the sample image, maybe you can see that what it's doing is adjusting the contrast. I don't remember what ADL stands for, but basically this is an image toning. I would suggest also leaving this off, because you can probably do more with a RAW file in post than you can with this camera in the camera's body, and doing stuff in the camera's body always risks introducing digital noise. This is your metering mode, and you have 3 different metering modes: matrix, center weighted, and spot. This is matrix, that's center weighted, and that's spot. Okay. So matrix divides the scene into however many parts, I forget, to It uses, oh, got it. Matrix uses a 420 pixel sensor in the camera to see a large part of the frame, though not all of it. And then it uses that image data and breaks those data into different points and uses information from the lens about what's in focus to determine the best exposure. Center weighted, what this does is this uses the image's central area to provide the majority of the imaging data, but not all of it. What's around is sometimes used for part of the metering. Spot takes an area at the very center of the frame and gives you 100% of your metering data from that area. And basically, spot's really good if you want to get a person exposed well. You take a meter reading off of their face, put in your settings however you need them to be to get that exposure, and then you recompose as needed to get that proper exposure. Evaluative and is really good for general shooting. Center weighted is good if you want to have what's in the center of your image provide the majority of your image data. And then spot's really good for having very specific meter readings off parts of your frame. So this is your autofocus frame area. This is three-dimensional autofocus. I don't remember what the different, that's going to be more of a central area. That's a central area with assist from the outside focusing points. And that's full area autofocusing, I believe, if I remember correctly, on this camera. And then 3D looks at what's the depth of the scene and what you have in focus to determine what the best autofocus should be. So just a matter of different uses. This will be good if you're centrally composing. This is good for action because you'll have you'll be focusing primarily on a small number of autofocus points, which makes the camera work makes the cameras work easier with assistance from the neighboring points. This is good if you have things throughout the scene that are going to be moving. Autofocus mode, APS-C, and manual focus. Manual focus is you focus the lens yourself. Autofocus automatic, autofocus servo, and autofocus continuous. All right, automatic is going to pick between servo and continuous based on the scene. Servo means that it's going to pick, it will focus in on a point and hold that focus until you take the picture. Continuous is good if you have moving subjects. So servo for stationary subjects, continuous for moving. Autofocus auto does slow down the autofocus a little bit, but it's good for switching between stationary and moving subjects. Your release mode is basically your drive mode. Single shot, continuous, self-timer, remote with self-timer, and remote, and quiet mode. So quiet mode is good if you're at a golf tournament or in a concert. Single shot is you hold down the shutter button, it'll take a picture, and then you can hold the shutter button as long as possible. It will never take another one. Continuous is as long as you hold down the shutter button, it'll keep taking pictures. 10-second self-timer. Using a remote control, this will then also give you a 2-second self-timer. Remote control, as soon as you hit the remote, the picture's taken. This is your ISO setting between all of your different ISO, manually selecting which ISO you would like to use. This is your white balance setting. So automatic white balance is the camera will look at the scene and picture and figure out what coloration needs to be added or removed to give you proper white tones. This is tungsten, so the camera will add blue to the images to give you proper whites under a warm orange light. This is your fluorescent, so that the camera will add magenta to your images to counter the greens from fluorescence. Daylight. Flash use, the camera will add a little bit of amber because flash provides a very blue light. Cloudy conditions for when you're under clouds. Shaded conditions for when it's sunny but you're in shade. And this is a preset, so you can take a picture of a white card or a sheet of paper and adjust your white balance settings, and then use that photo to create a custom white balance. Image quality, RAW, RAW plus, and this is basically RAW plus small, RAW plus medium, RAW plus large. Basic images, normal images, fine images, those are JPEG tonings. Just leave it at RAW. This Windows 10, and I would assume any future Windows version, will be able to display thumbnails off of the RAW file, so there's no benefit to having it RAW plus anything else. And RAW gives you a lot more editing power than JPEGs. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of the different settings and everything on the camera, let's take a picture with it. Taking a picture with this camera is pretty easy. It's designed to do that very well. All you need to do is figure out which one of these many modes you're going to be in. If you're in manual, aperture, or shutter priority, then what you need to do is get into that mode and also adjust your settings accordingly. You're going to look through the viewfinder. If you have the zoom lens, zoom to the appropriate amount for your framing. Hold down the shutter button and take a picture. And it's that simple. Just like that. There we go. If we're in continuous drive mode, you can hear how it's taking photos just continuously. And that's it. That is how you take photos with the camera. You just dial it in, dial in your settings. If you're using manual mode, make sure that your meter reading, that you set your aperture and shutter speed for a proper meter reading, and then just go and take your photos. And that is it for video 2 with the Nikon D5000. In the next video, we're going to go through the menu system, and we're going to talk about how to set up the menu and what all of the different menu options are. Thank you for watching this video. Please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that I'm on the right track producing content which is useful and helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comments section below. I'm pretty good about checking these every couple of days and answering questions. If you have any suggestions or ideas for future videos, and if I have the technical know-how and equipment, I'm more than happy to make those. One last thing. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I gotta get up, Steinbeck. I have to turn off the camera.